Have you ever been underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed because of your circumstances? What if the world's assumptions about you didn't define who you were, but instead fueled your drive to rise higher? Join us as we share the story of one woman's incredible journey to redefine success. It started on a rainy Monday morning, the kind where everything feels heavy: the sky, the silence, and the stairs. Denise Williams stepped into Lincoln High School wearing a navy blue jumpsuit and scuffed up sneakers. In one hand, she held a mop. In the other, a ring of keys that jangled with quiet authority. But no one saw that. No one looked past the uniform. "Hey, janitor lady!" A boy near the lockers tossed a crumpled wrapper at her feet. Another whispered, loud enough to hear, "She probably dropped out of school herself." Laughter echoed down the hallway. Even a few teachers cracked smiles they thought she wouldn't notice. Denise didn't flinch. She just bent down, picked up the wrapper, and tossed it in her cart. One insult at a time, swept away like dust on the floor. But this wasn't just any school, and Denise wasn't just any janitor. Lincoln High had a reputation, not just for its state championships or academic excellence, but for its polished image and a long, unspoken history of who belonged in positions of power. And Denise, she didn't fit the mold. Middle-aged, dark-skinned, quiet, always watching, always cleaning. No one thought to ask why she lingered in classrooms after the bell, or why she paused at bulletin boards reading every notice, or why her eyes always scanned the students, not with judgment, but with careful calculation. To the staff, she was invisible. To the students, she was a punchline. But Denise kept showing up, every day, on time, mop in hand, head held high. Because what they didn't know was that every hallway she mopped brought her one step closer to a plan she'd been building for years. And it wasn't just about the floors, it was about the foundation. That rainy morning, as thunder rumbled in the distance and students shuffled to class, Denise stood alone in the cafeteria, looking out over rows of empty tables. She smiled faintly, as if seeing something no one else could see. "You think I'm just the janitor," she whispered to herself, "but you have no idea what I'm here to do." And with that, she dipped the mop into the bucket, dragged it across the floor like a paintbrush across a canvas, and began writing the first stroke of her legacy, one swipe at a time. They called her Miss Denise. If they bothered to address her at all, most just referred to her as the janitor. She moved through the school like a shadow, always there, rarely seen. But lately, her presence started to linger in conversations. Not loud ones, quiet ones, behind closed doors. It began with a murmur in the staff room. She was looking at the lesson plans again. She asked about the state testing schedule. She corrected my grammar board, and she was right. At first it was brushed off, just a nosy janitor, maybe bored. But then came the odd question from a student. "Miss Denise helped me with my algebra homework. Miss Denise told me about a scholarship program my counselor never mentioned." Teachers started to glance at each other. How did she know about that? And why did it seem like some of the struggling students, the ones they'd quietly written off, were now quoting Miss Denise like she was their mentor? "She listens," one student said. "She sees us." That struck a nerve, because some of the faculty didn't want to be seen. See, Lincoln High had its polished surface, its grant-winning programs, college prep banners, and magazine-worthy diversity brochures. But behind the scenes, discipline referrals were disproportionate, special ed students were sidelined, and the so-called model teachers had a long history of microaggressions buried beneath tenure and smiles. Denise saw all of it, and the more she observed, the more she asked, softly, strategically. In the hallway, "Did they ever fill the math coordinator position? What curriculum are they running now?" To a teacher at the copier, "Oh, I noticed your ESL group seems smaller than last year. Budget cuts?" Each question felt harmless, but together, they formed a picture, a blueprint. What they didn't know was that Denise wasn't gathering gossip. She was gathering intel. Before this job, she'd been the principal of a successful charter school in Chicago. A school that took inner-city kids from forgotten corners and launched them into Ivy Leagues. But when her mother's health declined, Denise stepped away, packed up her life, came back home to Georgia. She applied for jobs that matched her experience, director roles, admin positions. But the doors didn't open. Not with her skin, not with her name. Not when she refused to code switch or dilute her worth. So she took what she could get, the janitor job, but she never forgot who she was. And now, she was in the belly of the beast, studying it, listening, preparing. In the staff room, the whispers grew louder. Why is she always around during parent-teacher conferences? She knew the superintendent by first name. Did you hear that? But no one dared ask her directly, because deep down, they were starting to feel it. She wasn't just watching the school. She was measuring it, like someone getting ready to own it. It started with a phone held just high enough. A student in the cafeteria hit record as Denise mopped up a spilled tray of spaghetti near table 7. The voice behind the camera giggled, "Y'all, look at the janitor get her daily cardio." Another voice chimed in, "Bet she don't even got a GED." Laughter erupted. Denise didn't react. She kept wiping the floor, slow, methodical, focused. She'd cleaned bigger messes in her life. This was nothing. But that 15-second video, it didn't stay in the lunchroom. It was uploaded, shared, tagged. Just the janitor. Lincoln High cleanup crew mocking, viral, cruel. It spread fast. Students sent it to friends. Teachers rolled their eyes and said, "Kids these days." No one expected what came next, because beneath the sea of laughing emojis and clown face reactions, there was a single comment, pinned, verified. "Y'all clowning the future superintendent at Lincoln County School Board." The school froze. At first, people thought it was a prank, a hacked account, a mistake, but it wasn't. The comment was real, and the account, official. Within hours, the clip disappeared, taken down, flagged, but screenshots lived on, and so did the questions. Wait, or what does that mean? The superintendent? Like, our superintendent? No way, she's just the janitor. Just. That word hung in the air like a sour stench. The next morning, students filed in quieter than usual. They glanced sideways at Denise as she unlocked the supply closet. Teachers avoided eye contact, now painfully aware of the echoing silence they used to fill with snide remarks. Even the principal, Mr. Conway, a man whose handshake had never once reached her, paused at the front office, staring down at his phone, face pale, brows furrowed. He had questions, but he also had a pit in his stomach, because the school board had just scheduled an emergency administrative review, and Denise Williams was on the guest list. In the lunchroom where the mockery had started, things were different now. The same students who laughed were whispering, not jokes, but rumors. Maybe she's undercover. I heard she used to run some big school in Chicago. Wait, she got 2 degrees? Like for real? The tone shifted. It wasn't funny anymore. It was real. And Denise? She moved through it all the same way she always had. Calm, unbothered, dignified. But inside, she knew the moment had arrived. The disguise was starting to crack. And soon, the truth would shine through. Because the floor they mocked her for cleaning, she was about to rise above it. The conference room on the 3rd floor was usually empty, used for board meetings, budget talks, maybe the occasional retirement cake. But that morning, it buzzed with tension. The principal, Mr. Conway, sat stiff in his chair, flipping through a manila folder with damp palms. To his right, 2 assistant principals. To his left, the HR director and a representative from the school board. No one spoke. No one smiled. The door opened. Slowly, in stepped Denise Williams. But this time, she wasn't wearing her janitor's uniform. No mop, no cart, no gloves. Just a deep charcoal gray blazer, crisp white blouse, and patent leather flats that clicked softly across the floor. Her posture? Perfect. Her presence? Undeniable. Mr. Conway's eyes darted up, then quickly down. almost like he didn't recognize her, or didn't want to. But Denise didn't flinch. She pulled out the chair at the end of the table, sat down and folded her hands. Calm, poised, ready. The HR director cleared her throat. Miss Williams, Denise, thank you for joining us today. I've been here, Denise said with a soft smile. Her voice, measured, warm, but edged with something sharp beneath. Steel. The silence that followed said everything. Because now they had to address what everyone had been whispering about for days. The comment, the video, the possibility. Mr. Conway finally spoke. There seems to be some confusion about your background. Perhaps you could clarify? Denise leaned forward. Gladly. She reached into her leather portfolio and slid out a stack of papers. Her resume, degrees, recommendation letters, even photos of the school she had once led. A K-12 charter in Southside Chicago. Top 5 in STEM outcomes for underserved youth. A graduation rate that beats state averages by 40%. And her title? Executive Director and Superintendent of Instructional Design. The room blinked. And, she added, a finalist for the National Education Leadership Award. One of the assistant principals let out a low whistle. Denise looked directly at Mr. Conway. I took this janitorial job when no one would look at my applications. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because I didn't fit their picture of leadership. Her words didn't accuse. They revealed. The HR rep broke the tension. So, just to confirm, you're here today for the final stage of the superintendent interview? Denise smiled. I never stopped being in the interview. Y'all just weren't paying attention. A beat of stunned silence. Then the school board rep leaned back and said, well then, Miss Williams, let's talk about your vision for the district. And with that, the real meeting began. Not with apologies, not with excuses, but with respect. Earned, owned, commanded. Because the woman they once called just the janitor, she now held the future of the entire school district in her hands. The auditorium had never been that full on a weekday. Teachers whispered behind clipboards. Students scrolled their phones, confused but curious. Parents filled the back rows, some called in last minute by district emails that simply read, Special announcement, superintendent address. Nobody knew what to expect. They'd heard the rumors. They'd seen the now deleted video. But still, the idea seemed absurd. Denise, the janitor, speaking on that stage? At exactly 10 a.m., the curtains parted, and there she was. No cart, no mop, just a slim black microphone in her hand, a small gold pin of her alma mater on her lapel, and an expression that silenced the room before she spoke a single word. She stood for a moment, let the silence breathe, let them see her. Then with the calm of a woman who had nothing left to prove, only truths to tell, Denise brought the mic to her lips. Some of you knew me as the one who took out the trash, wiped down your boards, scraped gum off the desks your kids sit at. A few chuckles, nervous, embarrassed. I didn't mind the work, because while I cleaned your messes, I studied your systems. The room got still. She began to walk the stage. Measured steps, eyes scanning every face. I saw which kids were always sent to detention and which ones got second chances. I saw classrooms with empty bookshelves and outdated laptops, while others had smart boards and iPads. I saw talent being ignored, voices being silenced, and hearts being hardened by low expectations. Some teachers shifted in their seats. Others looked down. But I also saw something else, she said, pausing. I saw kids who, when spoken to with kindness, opened like flowers. I saw staff who wanted to do better, who were just stuck in a system that forgot how to care. And I realized I wasn't sent here to sweep floors. I was sent here to rebuild the foundation. Gasps, tears in the eyes of a few veteran teachers. One parent clapped, then another, then more. Denise held the mic close. I didn't climb my way here. I walked deliberately through every hallway, into every classroom, alongside every child, not to be better than anyone, but to be better for everyone. Applause broke like thunder. What started with side eyes and skepticism was now a standing ovation. And the kids, the ones who used to laugh the loudest, they were on their feet too, because they finally saw it. She wasn't just Miss Denise, she was Superintendent Williams. And that stage she stood on, it wasn't the end of her journey, it was the beginning of everyone else's. The very next day, the halls of Lincoln High felt different. No, it wasn't the faint hum of freshly waxed floors or the smell of polished desks. It was something deeper, something that had been missing for years. The first bell rang, and instead of the usual chaos, students pushing, teachers rushing, there was focus. Denise Williams, now the district's new superintendent, had made it clear. This was her house now, and she wasn't here to play nice. She was here to make the system work for everyone. The first change? It came during morning announcements. Instead of the usual, "Good morning, Lincoln High," a new voice echoed through the loudspeakers. "Good morning, Lincoln. This is Superintendent Williams. I'll be in your classrooms today." Teachers blinked in disbelief. Her voice had cut through the monotony of the standard morning greeting. But this wasn't just a promise to visit. This was a mandate. Throughout the day, Denise walked through classrooms, cafeteria lines, and even the bathrooms. No mop this time, just a notebook in hand. She wrote down names, notes, questions, and most importantly, ideas. She saw students who'd been ignored for too long. She saw teachers who wanted to do more but were trapped in outdated methods. "Why do we still have textbooks from 2005? She asked a math teacher. "And why is there still only one computer in the whole class?" The teacher stammered, unsure how to answer. Denise didn't stop. She couldn't. Not now. She didn't need to lecture. She didn't need to explain why things were broken. She just acted. Within a week, Denise had arranged a meeting with the school board. She laid out a 90-day plan, complete with a detailed proposal for curriculum updates, teacher development, and even mental health resources for students, especially the ones no one saw. "We can't just teach math and English," she told them. "We need to teach kids to dream again, to believe that they can." The changes came fast. By the end of the month, school district funds that had been buried under red tape and politics were reallocated. Technology started to appear in classrooms. More teachers were hired, diverse educators who actually reflected the students they taught. And the students, they started to believe. In the cafeteria, a group of girls who had once mocked Denise for cleaning floors were now sitting with her during lunch, asking questions about her journey. "How did you do it, Miss Williams?" one of them asked, her eyes wide with admiration. Denise smiled. "I didn't do it alone. We do it together." But not everyone was pleased. Not every teacher was happy to see their comfortable way of teaching disrupted. Not every parent was thrilled with the new rules. There was resistance, of course, but Denise wasn't intimidated. She didn't back down. She didn't apologize for making waves, because she knew, deep down, this was the only way to make change real. By the time the semester ended, Denise Williams wasn't just a name, she was a movement. And as she walked through the school one last time before the holidays, the students no longer called her just the janitor. They called her Miss Williams, superintendent, leader, because the slate had been wiped clean. And the rules? They had changed, for good. By the time the school year closed, Lincoln High was a different place, not just in how it looked, but in how it felt. The students no longer walked the halls in silence, heads down, burdened by unspoken expectations. Now they laughed with purpose. They discussed their futures, not just their weekends. They asked questions. They dreamed bigger. But the biggest shift? It was in the hearts of the faculty. Teachers who had once grumbled about their outdated textbooks and lack of support found themselves in new training programs, learning strategies to engage every student, no matter their background or learning style. Principals and department heads, once reluctant to change, had now embraced the new vision. They spoke the language of growth, and it wasn't just because of Denise's presence. It was because Denise believed in them. She empowered every teacher to see the potential in their students, to understand that their role wasn't just to grade papers, but to shape futures. She asked them to look beyond the classroom walls, to consider what their students needed to succeed in a world that often overlooked them. In the community, Denise's reputation spread, not as the woman who cleaned floors. No, she had wiped that narrative away, but as the woman who dared to imagine a future where every student had an equal chance. And her actions proved it. Parents who had once been skeptical were now meeting with her regularly, working together to build better resources, to strengthen after-school programs, to ensure their children had every opportunity to thrive. They saw a different superintendent, someone who cared not just about graduation rates, but about what happened after the cap and gown. Even the media took notice. News outlets covered Denise's story, highlighting her unconventional path to leadership. But what they didn't always get was the depth of her transformation. It wasn't just about proving a point, it was about rewriting the rules. She'd come into that district with a mop in her hand and a vision in her heart. But it was her courage, her conviction, and her unwavering belief in the power of community that had changed the game. One day, a former student, now in college, emailed her. "I just wanted to say thank you. When you spoke in the cafeteria that day, I didn't think much of it, but now as I study for my final exams, I see it. You didn't just change the school, you changed me." Denise stared at the screen for a moment, and then, just like always, she moved forward. Because she knew her legacy wasn't written in the moments of applause or praise. It was written in the thousands of small lives that would now thrive because of the foundation she had laid. And as she stood before the school board one final time, preparing to present her long-term plans for the district, Denise couldn't help but smile. She had walked in as the janitor, but she was leaving as the legacy. And this was only the beginning. The final day of the school year arrived, and the air in the district office felt different. It was lighter, more alive. There was a sense of anticipation, hope. Denise Williams stood at the front of the room, facing the school board, staff members, and the entire district leadership. The time had come to present her final initiative for the next phase of the district's transformation. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't rattled by the weight of the decisions being made. She had walked this path before, through harder trials, and she knew one thing. Leadership wasn't about titles. It was about impact. The school board chairman cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses, clearly impressed by the changes already implemented. "Superintendent William," he began, "the district is a different place thanks to your leadership, but we want to hear from you about where we go from here." Denise nodded, then took a deep breath. "This is just the beginning. We've done a lot in a short amount of time, but there's so much more to do." She stood tall as she outlined her new initiative. A full district-wide mentorship program for every student, redesigned curriculum that includes social-emotional learning, creativity, and critical thinking, expanded resources for low-income students and those with disabilities, a long-term teacher development program that rewards innovative and inclusive teaching methods. Her vision? To create a learning environment where no student, regardless of their background, had to ask for a chance. Where every child, whether from a wealthy family or from a home struggling to make ends meet, could see their potential reflected back at them in their classrooms. And most importantly, a place where teachers weren't just educators, but mentors and advocates for their students' future. The school board was silent for a moment as they absorbed her words. Then, as if on cue, one by one, the board members nodded. Some even clapped. The change was happening, and they were finally part of it. But it wasn't just the board members who took notice. The students felt it too. When the school bell rang at the end of the year, a group of graduating seniors gathered outside the front doors. They weren't just celebrating diplomas. They were celebrating the opportunity Denise had given them to believe in their dreams again. One by one, they hugged her. "Thank you for seeing me, Miss Williams. Thank you for believing in us." And Denise, she looked each one of them in the eye, her heart swelling with pride. "You did the hard work," she said softly, "but I'll be cheering for you every step of the way." That evening, as the sun set over the district, Denise sat on the steps of the district office, watching the school lights flicker on one by one. This place that had once felt cold, distant, and divided, it was now warm, connected. A new chapter had begun, not just for the district, but for every student, teacher, and parent whose life had been touched by her leadership. Denise Williams had walked into that school as a woman who had been underestimated, overlooked, and written off. But she had left a legacy, a new beginning, for all. And that, she knew, was just the beginning. Denise Williams showed us that greatness isn't defined by what others see, but by what we believe in ourselves. She turned every doubt, every obstacle, into fuel for change. Her story reminds us all, no matter where you start, you have the power to rewrite your future.